Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Just a week to go from tonight until the midterms, and Election Day is finally becoming a referendum on something that really matters: immigration. Who gets to live here? What does citizenship mean? What kind of country do we want? These are not small incidental questions. What you're watching is not an argument about Russian Facebook ads or Stormy Daniels or her creepy lawyer or some other diversion designed to prevent you from thinking clearly. These are core debates. These are the arguments that every functioning democracy must have, and yet ours rarely does. Consider the question of birthright citizenship. Under current interpretations of American law, anyone born on our soil automatically becomes a U.S. citizen. Context is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if your parents were tourists or illegal aliens or foreign saboteurs, if their plane was forced down to refuel and you emerged. It doesn't matter. If you were born on our property, you are a citizen. Well, in a recent interview with Axios, President Trump suggested this is not a great deal for America. He pledged to change it with an executive order. As of tonight, it seems likely that order would abolish so-called birth tourism. That's where people travel to the United States solely for the purpose of having kids and winning citizenship, along with the many benefits that follow from that. We'll know more about it soon, and of course, we'll tell you when we do know. But nobody else in Washington is waiting for details. They hate it already. The very same people who have spent decades trying to gut the Bill of Rights are now lecturing the rest of us that the idea is, brace yourself, unconstitutional. Paul Ryan, for example, he's the outgoing Speaker of the House. He announced his opposition to this immediately. The very idea, he said, is ridiculous. Listen.
Well, you obviously cannot do that. You cannot end birthright citizenship with an executive order.
Well, obviously. Note the phrasing. Obviously. That's what people say when they don't feel like making a rational case for their positions, usually because they can't. Is it really, quote, obvious that the Constitution requires us to give citizenship to the children of illegal aliens? Paul Ryan has no idea. He just doesn't want to have a conversation about it. He wants you to be quiet. In fact, as a legal matter, it is an open question. The Supreme Court has never ruled on it. But there is ample reason to believe the law does not apply to illegal immigrants or birth tourists. Birthright citizenship arises from the 14th Amendment that was passed just 3 years after the Civil War. And it was passed to guarantee citizenship to freed slaves. The senator who wrote the citizenship clause in the 14th Amendment, Jacob Howard of Michigan, explained the point of it on the Senate floor at the time. Quote, "The amendment will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers," end quote. Again, the amendment was designed to ensure that newly freed slaves would be treated as the American citizens they were. The point was to enfranchise African Americans. The point was not to enable the rest of the world to scam our system, to abuse our generosity. Trump's proposal will get us closer to the purpose of the 14th Amendment. And for that, he is being denounced naturally as a racist. Listen to some of the dumb people on TV.
What used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, dog whistles to appeal to the fears of white voters now are just stated openly.
The principal debate in Europe and the United States, the real fault line that gets people going is this issue of openness. How open are we to people? How open are we to trade? And it's this issue of national identity versus internationalism, globalism, if you will. So what Donald Trump is doing is he is mining that fault line. He is working it, whether it's birthright citizenship, whether it's sending troops to a border that's not under siege. We're no longer arguing serious issues about how to regulate our economies. We're no longer arguing serious issues, say, about how to fight the Cold War. We are arguing questions about national identity. And it's not that far to get from that to issues of racism.
So let's get this straight. Defining citizenship is not, quote, a serious issue? Only in New York and Washington, where serious is where to find good burrata or how to get to the Hamptons in under 3 hours on a Friday night. These people are total buffoons. In fact, there is no more serious debate than the debate over citizenship, and it's long overdue. Globally, birthright citizenship is the rare exception. It is not the rule. Canada and the US are the only developed countries that have birthright citizenship. Not a single European country allows it. Out of the 54 countries in Africa, only 2 offer birthright citizenship. Are the other 52 racist? How about Harry Reid? Is he a racist too? Watch the former Democratic Senate Majority Leader explain his views on birthright citizenship.
If making it easy to be an illegal alien isn't enough, how about offering a reward for being an illegal immigrant? No sane country would do that, right? Guess again. If you break our laws by entering this country without permission and give birth to a child, we reward that child with U.S. citizenship and guarantee a full access to all public and social services this society provides. And that's a lot of services. Is it any wonder that 2/3 of the babies born at taxpayer expense at county-run hospitals in Los Angeles are born to illegal alien mothers?
Now, as a factual matter, that's tougher than anything Donald Trump has ever said. Keep in mind that just 4 years ago, that man, Harry Reid, was the top Democrat in the Senate. Try saying that today, he'd be called Bull Connor and shouted off the stage. But the questions he raised are still fair questions. Is unlimited birthright citizenship helping this country, or is it hurting this country? Under our current system, illegal immigrants who come to the U.S. and have children are eligible to receive tax credits, food stamps, other welfare benefits. Those are huge incentives. Not surprisingly, 1 in every 12 births in this country right now is to someone here illegally. And that total does not even include birth tourism. Every year, tens of thousands of foreign nationals come to this country on tourist visas solely to give birth to children. The Chinese are strongly overrepresented in this. One ad in China offers, quote, high-end U.S. birth tourism specialists, end quote. For just 20 grand, these experts navigate clients through the process of having a child in America. In return for that 20 grand, their kids gain the right to Social Security, Medicare, countless other federal programs. If they come back to the U.S. for college, they get in-state tuition, federally backed student loans, financial aid, all the benefits that ought to be going to actual Americans who are drowning in college debt. This is a scam. There is no other word for it. And by the way, don't blame the Chinese or the Russians or the Salvadorans or anybody else using the system. We're the ones offering it. Why wouldn't they take it? The blame lies with us. No other country would allow itself to be relentlessly exploited like this for decades. And no other leadership class would side with foreigners over its own people. And yet ours does every time. And that tells you everything. Michael Anton is a former senior national security official in the Trump administration, a lecturer at Hillsdale College, and probably the first person in this generation to raise the question of whether birthright citizenship is indeed constitutional. Thank you very much, Michael Anton. You wrote this piece that I think began this current conversation this past July. And people were stunned to find out that this was not a settled matter. Most people believe this is etched on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, but it's not.
Right. And I do want to give credit where credit's due to people that I learned these arguments from. John Eastman is a constitutional scholar and lawyer and litigator. He litigates constitutional questions. And Edward Erler, who's a student of the American founding and the Civil War era, who's done the scholarly work on this. I learned this argument from them. They're two of my teachers. But it's true that, it had kind of gone dormant for a while.
Dormant? This is flat Earth Society stuff. So everyone believes that we have a constitutional mandate to allow the children of illegal aliens to become citizens.
And they base that belief on a misreading of the very first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which says all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. They leave out the part in the middle, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. They either leave it out or they say subject to the jurisdiction just means you have to obey the law. Well, everybody has to obey the law. If you're a tourist coming from England or Canada or anywhere, you have to obey U.S. law while you're in the United States. That doesn't make your children a citizen or you a citizen. Subject to the jurisdiction meant something specific to the people who wrote the amendment. We know this because they said it. You read the debates over the amendment. They said it means that you don't owe allegiance to any foreign power, to anyone else. You're subject to the complete jurisdiction of the United States, which means you're not a citizen of another country. So it clearly doesn't apply to people who aren't citizens or who are born to people who aren't citizens, who are subject to the jurisdiction of another country. The Constitution is clear on that point. There's no statute that says otherwise, but decades ago, the executive branch agencies of the federal government just decided to apply this principle as if, well, we owe everyone birthright citizenship. Now, why do they do that? Why do bureaucracies typically, in our country anyway, typically act act without authority. Usually it's to serve the interests of liberalism. When the administrative state starts doing something that it's not authorized to do and that no one has ever told it to do, you can bet it's not doing so for conservative reasons or for reasons that benefit American citizens. It's doing so for reasons that benefit liberalism. And that's what happened in this case.
So you're hearing the argument now from the usual chorus of dumb people that this, like everything that they don't like, is racist.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the purpose of this amendment was to enfranchise people who had been African Americans who'd been enslaved.
Absolutely.
And so, in what sense would this? I mean, does that argument even make sense?
No.
And I want to take it seriously.
As you say, though, it's the racist is just a cudgel with which to beat up people whose arguments you don't like. So the 13th Amendment freed every slave. You had a controversy at the time where some states were saying, okay, you can free the slaves, but we have the power to make them citizens and we're not going to do it. So Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1866, the same Congress, same year that drafted this amendment. That was vetoed by President Johnson. The veto was overridden, so you get 2/3 of both houses saying, free black slaves, they are citizens. And that also says not subject to any foreign power. Well, then some of the southern states came back with, okay, well, 1857, the Supreme Court ruled in Dred Scott that no black person, even a free black person, could ever be a citizen of the United States. So the Reconstruction Congress said, okay, then we're going to put this in the Constitution. We're not going to let you get away with this. We're going to make this undeniable that every freed slave and their descendants are citizens of the
So
United
an
States.
amendment designed to enfranchise African Americans born here, been here 400 years, 500 years, is now being used by Chinese nationals
And Russians, too.
Russians flying into Guam or Los Angeles to have children here. That would be not the original intent. I think it's
Absolutely not. I mean, one of the things that I find incredible and amusing, sadly so, though, is the Russia hysteria of our time. Russia's supposed to be the biggest enemy the United States has right now, more dangerous enemy than in the Cold War. We're all supposed to be almost on a war footing with Russia.
Yes.
And the president is criticized for saying maybe we should cool it a little bit and turn the heat down. However, we can't question the practice of Russian women flying to Miami and having their babies to get U.S. birth tourists. So this supposed enemy of ours, it's a sacrosanct principle to allow them to abuse our system by giving citizenship to their children who are born here, spend a couple of days, and then go back to Moscow.
So the real principle that undergirds it is hurting ourselves. We're required to hurt ourselves.
Hurting ourselves, and of course hurting the president.
Right.
I mean, the Russia story is all about hurting the
In
president.
America, masochism being the operating impulse of the left. It's bizarre. Michael Anton, who kicked this off, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.